everyone. Welcome to Thursday Q&A, live Q&A with the doctors. Happy to have you here. I'm Dr. Chris Miller, and today I am joined by Dr. Carrie O'Connor and Stephanie Spencer.
Hey there.
Hi, thank you for being here. First of all, we'd like to know where everybody is coming from. So as usual, please tell us in the comment box where you're coming from today so we can see where everybody is. And in the meantime, while you guys are doing that and getting settled, hi, Bill. Welcome. Hi, Stu from Delaware. Marie is here. Awesome. Nice to have you guys. In the meantime, Dr. O'Connor, do you want to introduce Stephanie to us? And then after we introduce Stephanie, we'll say hi to everybody who's joined, and then we're going to get started.
I'd be happy to. So we have with us today a fantastic guest, Stephanie Spencer. Stephanie is a former cardiac RN of 27 years. In her career, she directed heart failure chronic disease management programs to prevent hospital readmissions and coordinated therapies for end-stage heart failure patients, bridging to artificial hearts and heart transplants. For decades, she has witnessed firsthand the devastating effects of the standard American diet on her patients' quality of life and life expectancy. In 2019, Stephanie discovered plant-based nutrition after her husband was diagnosed with diabetes. She is now board certified through the American College of Lifestyle Medicine, is certified in plant-based nutrition from the T. Colin Campbell Center for Nutrition Studies, and teaches plant-based nutrition classes in person and online through her business, Natural State of Health. After spending decades in chronic disease management, Stephanie is passionate about sharing the possibility of chronic disease reversal and seeing her students' health completely transform through whole food plant-based eating and lifestyle changes. Stephanie runs the Food is Medicine Club in her home state of Arkansas and has become an expert on sprouting and microgreens, which she'll discuss today. So take it away.
All right. Why, thank you. Do you want to do the recognize where everyone's from?
Yes, I want to say hi to everybody real quick. So thank you everybody for telling us where you're from. We have Debbie from California. Hello to you. Charlie from Worthington, Massachusetts with 2 feet plus of snow. Wow. Hope you're staying warm.
Yay, snow.
I know. Awesome. Omaha, Nebraska for GT Mustang. Welcome. Kathy Fain from Texas. Welcome. Nice to have you. So awesome to have you guys. Thank you so much for joining. And Stephanie, we were chatting a little bit ahead of time, and you have an amazing talks for us. We're going to jump into that, and you have so much good information. And I know people have questions on sprouts. I know I do, and I think Dr. O'Connor does as well. So we're going to let you take it away, and then we'll open it to questions at the very end.
All right. Well, let's dive right in. So yeah, I want to thank both Dr. Miller and Dr. O'Connor for having me on and for plant-based telehealth. I'm really excited to be here today. But yeah, we're going to talk all about microgreens and sprouts. And yeah, they're really exciting. I have a microgreens business and I sell to farmers markets and restaurants. And you're going to find microgreens and sprouts are just a nutritional easy button, a super easy way to get hyper concentrated nutrition. So yeah, go ahead and share the screen there. And yeah. So let me give you a little bit about my background here. So yeah, that's the old Stephanie in her old life, running a heart failure clinic. I did that for about 20 years. And really the term for what I did for most of my adult life and what we all do in the outside world in the medical field was chronic disease management, which is really, a term that encompasses about everything we do there. The average American healthy life expectancy these days is estimated to be age 89, and many people will spend about 17 years in poor health, with the last 9 years being debilitated. And I usually cared for folks like the last 3 years of their debilitated 9 years. So yeah, and these chronic diseases that just upended my patients' quality of life and decreased their life expectancy all have one thing in common. They're all largely caused by the food we eat, and they are all largely preventable. So after about 27 years doing this, by 2019, I had gotten to the point where I was just ready for a change. And guess what? I started a microgreens business. And so I wasn't plant-based at the time, but I just kind of had this feeling I kind of wanted to work in food and health and just something different. And it was really ironic because right around the same time I started this business, my husband came home from the doctor one day with blood work showing that he was pre-diabetic, basically. And I was absolutely aghast because I thought we were healthy. And I immediately just had visions in my mind of me pushing pushing Paul in a wheelchair to the wound clinic to go to his daily hyperbaric treatments. Like, this is the kind of thing that I used to care for patients like this for years and years. And I was like, no, we are not going down this path. And I had just happened to watch the Netflix documentary like 6 months earlier called What the Health, where Dr. Neil Bernard just explains in depth how type 2 diabetes is reversible with a plant-based diet. And I had never heard of that. I'd never seen anyone's diabetes reverse. I had just managed diabetes for 30 years. And so as soon as I got Paul's blood work, I said, we're going on a plant-based diet tomorrow. And luckily he didn't fight me. We switched to a plant-based diet. 4 months later, we rechecked his blood work and he was back in the normal range. We both lost 20 pounds. And you can see on this slide, the one on the left, that's like, I'd probably gone plant-based for about 2 months at that point. And the one on the right that was about 6 months ago. But you can see I lost about 20 pounds there, but the weight just comes off. I could not believe how easy a plant-based diet was, because I thought it was going to be really hard, but I was like, by God, we're going to do this really difficult diet because we have to. And then we started, I'm like, oh my gosh, it's easy. And then I thought, I just thought back to all my patients that have suffered for so many years because they just don't have this information. And so then I just became obsessed with plant-based nutrition, fell down the rabbit hole. I got, like certified in the T. Colin Campbell program. And then I got board certification through the American College of Lifestyle Medicine. And I thought I spent most of my adult life like creating programs for chronic disease management, basically to keep patients out of the hospital and shield the American taxpayer from heart failure admissions. But I thought, well, I could just do the same kind of thing and focus on chronic disease reversal. And because my whole adult life, I've worked in diseases that everyone has. And this is what this is, like type 2 diabetes, heart disease, high cholesterol, hypertension. And so, so then I created an online course, or actually an in-person course. Here we go. I started that in January of 2020. I just rented out a room, advertised. I got like 36 people to come to my first class. And I designed it. It goes over 4 weeks. And so what I do, and this is designed for regular people that are like, I don't know about this. Like, everyone here is eating sausage biscuits for breakfast, right? That's what we eat in the South. And so it starts out the first week, we're going to learn all about where do you get your protein. And then we also work on just substituting meat. Okay. So we go just a little bit at a time. The second week, we're going to wrap our heads and learn all about type 2 diabetes and like population changes and changes in our food supply over time. And then we work on dropping dairy. The third week is heart disease. It's you're as old as your arteries. You're going to learn all about heart disease, all about different populations, different food systems. And then we're going to work on cooking without oil. And then the fourth class is all about weight loss, like the pleasure trap, like evolutionary changes over time, how our food system changed. And I just feel like it's hard for people to change everything they've ever known about food just because like they see something on a bumper sticker. Like I really had to understand all of it to really understand that I would be much better off without meat and dairy. I couldn't just listen to someone say like, oh, elephants don't eat meat and they're fine, So that's what I try to do is like really thoroughly explain it all. So you learn for 4 weeks. And then after that, that's what I call the 21-day plant-based challenge. You dive in for 21 days after you've learned everything and developed your cooking skills. And then we go 21 days, hardcore, no meat, no dairy, no oil. And then we recheck labs afterwards, blood pressure and weight. And we also have a whole module at the beginning where they're going to like plug in their existing labs, blood pressure and weight, and they're going to see what they want to aim for to be disease proof. And I have a lot of resources for people that are working with which is the norm, a non-plant-based physician. So I have a lot of materials from the American College of Lifestyle Medicine, like a module on how to deprescribe. I have their white paper that shows how, as clinicians, we should really work to reverse a disease if we have data that shows that that's possible instead of just managing it for all eternity. And then I have even like a 5.5 hour CME continuing medical education unit that physicians can do offered through ACLM in conjunction with the White House Commission on Hunger and Nutrition. So there's a whole lot of resources that people can work with, like their regular family practice doctor. And and really get all their questions answered. And I also have a group coaching session. So I switched after COVID, it's all online now, online self-paced. And I also include a group coaching session with me every month. So everyone that purchases it gets that. And I have like my monthly support group that Dr. O'Connor spoke at last night. And then I'm also, don't tell anyone, but I'm working on a beta testing a little accountability group for people like, you've got all the information, but we're still like not really making the conversion, quickly enough or definitively enough. So we've got all sorts of support there. But anyway, let me go on and tell you about the other thing I do, which is microgreens. So yeah, this is my grow room. And in Arkansas, like in San Diego, you can grow microgreens outdoors. But in Arkansas, with like 100% humidity in the summer, no, we have to grow them indoors. And microgreens are kind of like the divas of the vegetable world, or like the ICU patients. Like everything has to be perfect. Like they want the temperature between 68 and 75 degrees and low humidity. So I have this room all, like dehumidified and everything. But yeah, so microgreens are basically just vegetable seedlings. And we're going to talk a little bit about how this all works. But just for any vegetable that's growing, it's important to understand all the nutrients come from the seed initially, okay? And so the seed is going to have, and that's why do we eat vegetables? Because they're packed with nutrition. So that's the vitamins, minerals, antioxidants, and phytonutrients. Phytonutrients are just plant nutrients. And but they're hyper concentrated in microgreens or sprouts, okay? And so sprouts can live, or microgreens can live for 7 days just off of the seed. And some microgreens growers will grow their microgreens in just like felt, or like they don't use soil. But all of my microgreens, a lot of my microgreens are grown for 2 weeks or sometimes longer. So I grow all of mine in soil so they can draw from the soil after that initial 7 days and have maximum nutrition. Sprouts and microgreens are rich in enzymes. And enzymes, it's important to understand what the enzymes function basically as factories in our bodies. They can turn one thing, like a substrate, into another thing, a metabolite, or they can also work in reverse, turn the metabolite back into the substrate. So enzymes basically do what our body needs to be done. They just shuffle like micronutrients where they need to be. And so the enzymes help carbohydrates become simple sugars. So all these things become more easily digestible in the sprouted form. Complex proteins become easily digestible amino acids. Fats become fatty acids. Vitamin levels surge. The majority of microgreens also are alkalinizing. And that's important because if you're eating a standard American diet, meat and dairy are acid promoting. And we know, like in the medical field, our bodies are basically alkalinic. Like the pH of blood is 7.35 to 7.45. If you remember back to like, junior high physical science, 7 is neutral, right? And below 7 is acid, above 7 is alkalinic. So our body is slightly alkalinic, but we're eating all of this acidic food. And so our body has to buffer this acid load and convert it to alkaline to be uptaken by our body. And the problem is when we're getting continually too much acid, it stresses our kidneys, and our bones really do a lot of the work in buffering. And so our bones and kidneys will get weakened and stressed over time. And this is a big contributing factor to like chronic kidney insufficiency. You switch to getting your protein from plants, you're getting a more alkaline diet, and that fixes a lot of these problems. So let me show this next slide. This is really cool. This was really a seminal study in 2012 done by the University of Maryland, in which they assayed a bunch of microgreens to see what their micronutrient content was and compared them to the mature raw vegetable. So like sprouts have been around for like millennia, I think, in like Chinese and Asian cooking, but microgreens kind of became popularized in the 90s, and they started being used in restaurants for garnishes and stuff. And so that's when they thought, like, I wonder if these things are good for you. So yeah, in 2012, they did this study. And so they compared a similar weight. So this is basically 100 grams of radish compared to, of micro radish compared to 100 grams of mature radish. And they found that the micro radish, the same weight, had 56 times more vitamin A than the mature radish, 6 times more phosphorus, okay? Garnet amaranth, which is really popular because it's super hot pink, 11 times more vitamin C than the mature variety, 4 times more vitamin K. Micro cilantro, 3 times more beta carotene, 11 times more lutein and xanthan. And chefs tell me too that the micro cilantro lasts way longer than regular cilantro. Red acre cabbage, this is the amazing one. And when the researchers first got these results back, they assumed it was a typo. They were like, this can't be right. They went back and rechecked it like 5 times, and they were like, they couldn't believe it. It was just jaw-dropping results, how micronutrient dense these microgreens are. So red acre cabbage, 6 times more vitamin C than raw adult cabbage, 20 times more lutein and xanthan, 40 times more vitamin E, and here you go, 260 times more beta carotene in micro cabbage than adult cabbage. So, and this is just a sampling, but this is why micronutrients, I mean, it's a great way to get a ton of concentrated nutrition. And that's a big problem that we have in our diets, clearly, is not enough micronutrient concentration. All right, now I'm going to talk about broccoli microgreens. These are in a class all of their own, or broccoli sprouts. I kind of use the terms interchangeably. We're going to talk about the difference, but it's basically an immature seedling that's hypernutrient dense. Okay, so researchers at Johns Hopkins have studied broccoli sprouts, broccoli microgreens a whole lot. Basically, they started out with the knowledge that, that populations that have a large consumption of cruciferous vegetables have a much lower cancer risk. So they were like, well, which vegetable is the most cancer protective or chemoprotective? And that they found was broccoli. And they thought, what is it in broccoli that is so protective? And they figured it out. It's called an isothiocyanate, which is just an antioxidant, basically, or a phytochemical called sulforaphane. And that was the cancer protective mechanism. I'm going to explain why in a little bit. But so they were like, well, okay, which variety of broccoli has the highest sulforaphane? Because they wanted to study this. So they start trying different varieties. It was real variable. Then they're in Maryland. Winter comes. They can't grow their broccoli anymore. So they move inside and start growing it indoors. And then they thought, well, let's just check out these little seedlings. And by God, it had 100 times more of the sulforaphane precursor than mature broccoli. And they were like, that's it. So in like all of the microgreen seedling, broccoli seedling varieties were hyper concentrated in this anti-cancer compound. So then they were off to the races, went to the New York Times, and it just blew open from there. And these days you can just about find broccoli sprouts in a lot of grocery stores because of this, because it's so amazing. So so let me show you how this works. So if you go to, Kroger's or wherever, and you buy some broccoli off the shelf, and then you assay it to check for the sulforaphane, broccoli that you just pulled off the shelf does not contain sulforaphane itself. What it contains is a precursor called glucoraphanin, okay? And so they can measure that, and that's actually what they were measuring, is the glucoraphanin content. So the way it works is you want to get a glucoraphanin-rich food, but then when we chew the broccoli or the broccoli microgreens, it is activated by this myrosinase process. And it's kind of like, like when you're a kid and you have those glow in the dark necklaces that they have like at 4th of July, and you break the necklace and it mixes the two fluids and then it glows in the dark. That's the same idea. You chew up the broccoli, that releases the myrosinase, and then it makes the sulforaphane really expressed. Okay. But there's no sulforaphane until you chew it up. This is the reason why the pharmaceutical industry has not been able to isolate sulforaphane, because it's not released until the human chews up the food. Okay. And so that's the amazing thing. And when sulforaphane gets released, it activates this amazing fairyland called the NRF2 pathway, which I'm going to explain in the next slide. But so, yeah. And when they tested the glucoraphanin, that precursor content, the sprouts or the microgreen broccoli had 100 times higher of the sulforaphane precursor than mature raw broccoli. So that's pretty amazing. So now we're going to talk about the magic of sulforaphane. So I don't know if y'all have ever heard of this NRF2 pathway before. Researchers discovered it about 20 years ago. And basically it controls about 200 genes, the expression of about 200 genes, all in a good way. And there's this quote here from this reference down below. The NRF2 pathway is the activator of cellular defense, the master antioxidant switch, and the guardian and gatekeeper for health and longevity. And I'm just going to tell you a few of the things that the NRF2 pathway, which is what sulforaphane activates, what it does. So it's going to activate antioxidant genes, anti-inflammatory genes. It's going to activate genes that inactivate harmful compounds like cancer-promoting enzymes. So it does all good things. It prevents DNA adducts, which is the damaged part of DNA, which leads to cancer, and then also enhances carcinogen excretion. It's really quite amazing. And so when we compare broccoli sprouts or broccoli microgreens, 1 ounce of broccoli sprouts has the same sulforaphane content as 1.5 pounds of mature broccoli. So that's a pretty amazing. You know, they have those commercials was like for Metamucil or something. They're like, you know, it's so hard to get fiber. And they show someone eating raw broccoli at the stoplight. And they're like, it's so crazy. No one could ever do that. Eat Metamucil. Well, you could just do broccoli sprouts instead. So, all right, let's talk about the difference between sprouts versus microgreens. Okay. And so the upshot is sprouts are grown. I'm going to show you here. Are grown in a jar. They have commercial outfits that do it a little bit different, but regular people sprout them in a jar. It's just seeds and water in a jar. They're ready in about 3 to 7 days. But there is a danger of bacterial contamination if you're kind of sloppy. So the reason is because when sprouts are growing, it is such a nutrient-rich environment and a protein-rich environment when those seeds are sprouting out with all that enzyme activity, that if there's any bacterial contamination, the bacterial content can just really soar to really high levels. And so there's been reported outbreaks of like salmonella, listeria, just things we don't want to have. And so the USDA does recommend that like the elderly, the young, pregnant women don't eat sprouts for that reason. But of course, it's always assumed that you're buying your sprouts from the store, which is not a stupid assumption to make. That's where most Americans get their food. But I'm going to show you in a little bit how we sprout. But people can sprout on their own at home, and then you control all aspects of it. And then you can eat it right away too, because in the store, like I've been looking at the sprouts lately in the store, they'll be like, purchase or just consume this in 2 weeks time. And God knows where it's coming from, like California or Texas, you know, like it's coming from a long ways away. So that it's the time and, you know, changes in variability of the temperature. So that's why I recommend sprouting your own if you're going to do sprouts. Microgreens, however, like you saw in my grow room, it's grown with light, so they get more chlorophyll. If they're grown in soil, they can draw more nutrients from the soil. And the soil has its own kind of like microbiome too, which kind of helps keep the pathogens down. Takes about 1 to 3 weeks to grow, but there's never been a documented case of an outbreak with microgreens. And so for that reason, like I am just too old to sell sprouts to the public. And people do, and I'm sure they're regulated and they do testing and stuff, but like the burden is just too high I'm just a tiny outfit. So I sell microgreens. But I'm going to show you right now, if you want to unshare the screen, I'm going to show you how we sprout seeds. So this is, and I have a link in the show notes where you can click and get the broccoli seeds from, I use True Leaf Market. So these are organic sprouting seeds. And I start off with just 2 tablespoons. Okay. And you want to wash, and I did, you want to wash your jar with hot soapy water and your lid, and then rinse it with filtered water, like reverse osmosis water. Okay. And so what you're going to do is you're going to get your water in your jar and you're going to let these soak for about 6 hours. Okay. So we're going to move forward in time and pretend that these have soaked. And then you're going to dump the water out. Okay, so I'm just dumping them into my bowl here. And then like I would rinse them again. And to be clear, sprouts can uptake any like trace minerals or trace heavy metals or anything that might be in your water supply. They will soak those up. So that's why we want to use filtered water or ideally reverse osmosis water. So you're not soaking up any, I mean, like we screen our water supply for cholera, but there's other stuff in it. So yeah, so then once you've got your seeds all soaked, then what you want to do is you want to kind of spread the seeds out. You don't want them all in a clump at the bottom, okay? So then you're going to spread your seeds out like this, and then you can just set your jar, like, can you see this here, in a bowl. And of course, mine, it's got water in it now, but I'm going to set it in this bowl, and then it's just going to sit and do its work and start to sprout. And then going forward, you are going to rinse and drain this twice a day, like once in the morning, 2 to 3 times a day, but in the morning and in the evening. And what I do is I just put my reverse osmosis water, just shoot it right through the lid, then swish it around, drain it out, and then do the same thing. Then you want to, swirl your seeds around so it covers all the walls. And then go ahead and bring my screen back up there. I'm going to show you. Okay, so this is 3 days in. You're going to start to get your little seedlings. And then by about 5 days, we've got a nice hefty batch of broccoli sprouts there. Okay. And so like I live in Arkansas, right? And if you watch like a how to sprout broccoli online, or everyone's always in Connecticut or something. And so, like they're like, just do it at room temperature. Well, in the summer here, room temperature can get up to like 78 degrees and we have high humidity. So sometimes what I recommend in the summer for like people that live in hot climates is to just get like a cooler and maybe just put like one little ice block in it. And that'll probably keep the temperature of the cooler at like 70 degrees, with a tiny ice block. And then you can keep your room temperature at truly room temperature. But I think if it's approaching like 78 degrees, that's probably too warm. Okay. And so then after 5 days, I just dump my broccoli sprouts out. And this is 4 ounces of broccoli sprouts. Okay. And so what I want you to remember is this number, 110 grams. Okay. Because I'm going to talk about some studies with the broccoli sprouts, and I'm going to tell you how many grams that they had. So you can kind of visualize like, what do we need to do to get a good amount. This is broccoli microgreens, and this is what I sell at the farmers market. This is I sell them in 2-ounce bags, and this is a stapler for reference, but this is just like a sandwich bag full of broccoli microgreens. And so that's 2 ounces is 57 grams. 4 ounces is like 110 grams. So yeah, that's 1 bag's worth. But in a pro tip, if you freeze your sprouts, if you're going to put them in a smoothie, you can freeze your sprouts or freeze your sulforaphane, because what happens when we freeze water? What happens to water? It's going to expand, right? So all the water in the broccoli sprouts, those cell walls are going to freeze, and then they're going to burst the cell walls, and that's going to activate that myrosinase reaction, right? Have you ever heard Dr. Greger talk about like broccoli, and he'll refer to sulforaphane? He'll talk about hack and hold. Like when you're making broccoli at home, cut it up and let it sit for a while. That's to activate the myrosinase. Okay. But we can do that if you're using it in a smoothie, which I do every day. I just always put my broccoli in the freezer and then put frozen broccoli in my smoothie. So it's already hyper concentrated with sulforaphane. All right. So now let's talk about the studies. Okay. These are really amazing. So just remember those amounts. 57 grams is 2 ounces, 110 grams is 4 ounces. Men with prostate cancer, when they did 140 grams of, like, it's usually like a broccoli sprout slurry or something that they do for these studies, their PSA, prostate specific antigen, that cancer marker, the doubling time of the PSA decreased by 86% in the group that did the broccoli sprouts. Okay, this one I love, the increased excretion of cancer-causing benzene. Benzene is the carcinogen that's in cigarette smoke and in like automobile exhaust. They had a group, I think these were smokers, that were like, I'm not going to quit smoking, but they're like, okay, we'll do these broccoli sprouts. 135 grams of broccoli sprouts pulled 61% of the benzene out of their bloodstream. Do you know how long it took? 1 dose, it pulled 61% out. Isn't that amazing? So it just is like a magnet for the carcinogens, sucking them out of your bloodstream. Let's see, 100 grams of sprouts a day of a broccoli had a 52% decrease in atherogenic index. That's just basically a measure of how trashed your coronary arteries are. And so it improved that or decreased the badness by 52%. Dropped fasting blood sugars by 20% with just 65 grams a day. This is really crazy. Improved symptoms of autism by 34%. They found that autistic children, parents have found that when they have a fever, there's this thing called the heat shock mechanism. When autistic children have a fever, they'll find that their autistic symptoms improve for some reason. And so these researchers found that this NRF2 pathway also seemed to work on the heat shock mechanism. And so they're like, well, let's try broccoli sprouts with autistic children. And sure enough, decreased their symptoms by 34%. And I've had parents with autistic children come by broccoli sprouts from me for that reason. And this is the craziest one. And there's a link in the show notes it's a Greger video talking about the power of broccoli sprouts with breast cancer. So, and again, these have never gone to phase 3 human studies because no one's got a patent on the broccoli sprouts, right? But in the preliminary studies, they got human breast cancer stem cell lines and injected them into mice. So you have 2 groups of mice. You have your study arm or the control arm, let's say, is just injected with the breast cancer stem cells. Then the study arm injected with breast cancer stem cells. They let it grow a little bit, and then they inject it with broccoli sprout juice, basically. The rats that got the broccoli sprout juice, that breast cancer stem cell line, it did not grow. It just stayed there because it's knocking out the stem cells. The group that didn't get the broccoli juice, the cancer just metastasized all over and then killed the mice. So, it's really amazing. But Dr. Greger shows a video where they just drizzle broccoli sprout juice on estrogen receptor positive breast cancer cells and then estrogen receptor negative breast cancer cells, and they just shrink up. So, it's really amazing, these broccoli sprout studies. But if you want to hear more about it, just get the links in the show notes. And I have another biochemist named Dr. Rhonda Patrick that does kind of like a Dr. Greger type of video. It's like an hour long, and she just summarizes all the studies done on sulforaphane. So, Okay, now let's move on to a different thing. This is another really useful thing that I sell, rainbow mix. And most self-respecting microgreens farmers are going to have their own proprietary rainbow mix. But we know that for maximum gut health, it's recommended to get 30 different varieties of plants per week to really enhance the health of your gut microbiome, right? And a lot of Americans, we're busy, you're just eating the same thing all the time. We have a limited diet, right? That's our big problem. But my rainbow mix, it has 11 varieties of vegetables in just a handful. So you can just get one handful and dump it on your salad, or I put it in my smoothie every morning. But I also have a bunch of weird things in my rainbow mix that you wouldn't normally get. So I've got buckwheat lettuce. It's sprouted buckwheat. I've got kohlrabi, garnet amaranth, and then I've got cabbage and beets, celery, mustard, arugula, all sorts of things. But it's a good way to get hyper concentrated leafy greens, a wide variety. If you've had to do a round of antibiotics, load up on some rainbow mix. You just want to get as wide a variety of plants that you can in your gut to build that gut microbiome back up. But, okay. And so then I boil all of this information down because I like to really focus on people that are just in the real world. And sometimes people are really sick and they got a scary diagnosis and they're overwhelmed and they're like, yeah, I can't absorb all this information. Just drop that sausage biscuit for breakfast and try my kitchen sink smoothie. Okay. So this is what I have for breakfast every morning. And down here, I have cooked soybeans. They're actually, I cook them and then freeze them because that helps with hot flashes. I'm in my mid-50s, so I need that. I put in oats and flax seeds and cinnamon, a bunch of things, but then I just put in a whole bunch of microgreens. So I put a big batch of my rainbow mix in, and then frozen broccoli sprouts for maximum sulforaphane. And the cool thing about microgreens, if you're a hardcore plant-based person, like a lot of these people can be like, oh, I've got a bunch of kale, but regular people are like, ooh, they don't like the taste. when you put the microgreens in, like microgreens clearly are different from like adult kale, right? They're just soft and tender. So they just kind of like, I blended this up first, and this is what it turns into here, this little slurry. But it's not really like super fibrous and bitter like adult kale would be, okay? And so it's easy for a regular person to wrap their heads, or you can even sneak microgreens in for like fussy people or for kids that like, granted, my kids were on a standard American diet when they were little. I didn't know anything about this, but I've heard people talk about like when they're raising plant-based kids and kids have such tiny appetites, it's hard to get them to eat enough, right? And so you can get a ton of concentrated, hyper concentrated nutrition in a smoothie, and a lot of variety, because kids are my kids were always super fussy. So anyway, and then I just put some fruit on top. You can use really whatever fruit you want, blend it all up, and that's what I eat for breakfast every day. But if you want the my smoothie recipe, if you go to my website, which is down there, naturalstateplantbased.com, and subscribe, the first email you're going to get, and check that lots of times these days it just goes to the spam folder, but you'll get a email with my smoothie recipe in it, in a video of me. I did this on Chef AJ too. But yeah, that's just a simple way to just boil it all down into a super simple formula. I even had a guy, like he wasn't even willing to go plant-based, but he was morbidly obese. He just started doing my smoothie like twice a day, and he lost 30 pounds in a month. It's just an easy formula for people that are like, I'm overwhelmed, just give me a recipe. There you go. So yeah, that's basically it. And that's the whole idea. We want to let food be our medicine and let medicine be our food. But I want to thank Plant-Based Telehealth for inviting me on today. This was lots of fun, and I'll just open it up to questions. I hope we've got enough time for questions.
Thank you so much. Let me get out of this. There we go. That was wonderful, Stephanie. Oh my goodness. So much good and useful information. I know I need that. And so I just want to thank you for sharing that with us. And we are running a few minutes late, so we're just going to save it for about 2 or 3 questions real quick. But this is such useful information. So if people aren't able to stay, this is recorded and you can watch it later. But I just want to take advantage of you while we have you here. So hopefully we can hang in for just a few more minutes. Dr.
I do have a question.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I do have a question. So actually 2 questions. So one, like the lutein and the zeaxanthin, actually it's more of a statement, is so important for eye health, right? So that's really critically important for eye health. And even Dr. Greger has some information that's come out this week on that as well too. So those microgreens, really, really good. And even my ophthalmologist, he's like, those dark leafy greens is the best way to go. I've seen people with sprouts saying you have to like cover your containers and like sprout in the dark. Is that true?
You can either sprout in the dark or sprout at room temperature. I mean, an ambient light, basically. When I did mine the other day, I just did them in ambient light. Yeah, either way is really fine. Like they will absorb some chlorophyll if they get the ambient light. So yeah, but like I said, like I think the important thing is not like you can't do it in the fridge. That's too cold, but if you are in a hot climate where you can't, like in Arkansas, like you have to be rich to keep your temperature 72 degrees with low humidity, so it's like, I always tell people, like, you might want to try just putting them in the cooler with an ice block and that'll be fine. But then that would be in the dark, and it's fine to grow them in the dark. Yeah.
Okay.
I also had a question from one of my patients this week in preparation for your talk, but she wanted to know if you need to buy special sprouting seeds if you're sprouting.
Yes. The answer is yes. So the difference between sprouting seeds and microgreen seeds and regular seeds, first of all, they have a higher germination rate. Okay. Regular seeds you don't want to have a bunch of dud seeds that are just sitting there. But also regular seeds are sometimes, I think, frequently sprayed with pesticides so that they will, grow better, I guess, in the ground. So that's why I get my seeds from, there's like the Sprout Man, that's another one. TrueLeafMarket.com. You can get seeds from Hippocrates Health Institute. But yeah, like True Leaf, it needs to be a sprouting seed or a microgreen seed, which is going to be, it's not going to have any contaminants on it, and it's going to be a high germinating seed. And that's with all microgreens. Like, you really don't want to like some people do sunflower seed. Don't go buy sunflower seeds from the hardware store. Like, you need to get those sprouting seeds.
And
It's really good to know.
Sunflowers, Debbie is asking, have you been able to grow sunflowers in jars, not soil?
I'll tell you true, I don't really sprout much because I have I have a nonstop supply of microgreens. So I just do microgreens. I don't think I've ever heard of anyone sprouting sunflowers. I mean, it might be possible, but I've not really heard of it. You can do any small seed, like all the cruciferous vegetables, those are small seeds, but like peas are a big seed, sunflowers are a big seed. You've got to soak the seeds, and then you've got to break open the seed, and the only way I know how to do it is with weight in soil, and then it sprouts. So I don't think you can do sunflower seeds in a sprouting jar.
Excellent. We're going to take 2 more, if that's okay. Do you have a few more minutes? Okay, we'll wrap this up. But GT Mustang asks, what if you don't have reverse osmosis water?
Use filtered water, like Brita water, but you just want to be able to pull out any contaminants that could be, or any I saw this video by Sunil Pai the other day, and he talked about all the stuff that's in our water that oh my, yeah. And we screen it for bacteria. I mean, it's like the meat, we irradiate the bacteria, but then there's all sorts of other stuff, and it's going to soak it up. So yeah, just use a Brita filter, but make sure you have a good filtered water.
Great, thank you. And the last question in the last few minutes is, Charlie asked, what kinds of things are not good for sprouting? So what should we be watching for?
Large seeds are, I don't know how you can sprout a large seed, but you can sprout any small seed. Like alfalfa sprouts really fell out of favor because alfalfa seeds are deeply scored. You remember back in the 80s and 70s, we used to have alfalfa sprouts on everything, but then they started having outbreaks. It's hard to control the bacterial contamination in alfalfa because those seeds are so deeply scored, and bacteria will just lodge in there, okay? And I mean, you can try to sanitize your seeds with apple cider vinegar and stuff like that. Some people recommend that, but you just need to get the good seeds, And True Leaf doesn't recommend doing a sanitization process because they have, specially made sprouting seeds. But yeah, just if you are careful, you wash your hands, you're, scrupulous, you should be able to do this, no problem. And you'll be able to keep better control over it than probably sprouts that are being trucked in from California and have been sitting around for 2 weeks. So.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much. We're going to wrap this up in the interest of time, not in the interest of not wanting to keep talking to you, because we could talk to you for so much longer. I put your website up there, naturalstateplantbased.com. You guys reach out to her. She is a wealth of information with so much to help us. So I know I will be looking for more information. If you have questions that weren't answered today, and there's such good questions, please reach out to her. Her email is naturalstateplantbased@gmail.com. There it is. So you can reach out to her. And I just want to thank you so much, Stephanie, for taking the time to explain that to us, and for coming and for joining us today. And to Dr. O'Connor for being here with all your wonderful wisdom and sharing with us, and for inviting Stephanie for being here today. So thank you.
Well,
thank you.
I'm hungry now. I'm hungry now, Stephanie.
I know.
I want some of those rainbow sprouts. So
I know. Put them on your hummus sandwich. See?
Yeah.
Exactly.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much for joining us. We always appreciate your taking the time to be with us. We know there's a lot of places you could be, so we really appreciate it. As always, we're here in all 50 states. So if you need an appointment, please don't hesitate to sign up with one of our doctors, plantbasedtelehealth.com. And in the meantime, have a wonderful 2 weeks, everybody. And we will see you guys in 2 weeks in April. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks,
Bye-bye.
everyone. Thank you.